This is a DrumWise mix, and today I'm here with Terry Keating, who is the CEO of Bonzoleum Enterprises. Hi, Terry.
Hi, Tom. How are you, baby?
What age did you get into drums, and what bands or artists inspired you when you first started playing?
You know, I first, what happened was, even when I was really, really little, I really loved music. My dad had a bunch of albums. He had Elton John and the Beatles. For some reason, we had a lot of Monkees records, which maybe my dad, I don't think, was a Monkees fan. We had some ABBA and, you know, all kinds of stuff. And I used to just I would listen to these albums with headphones on. My dad had this old Marantz, or I don't even know how you pronounce it. They're not around anymore. Marantz system, and I would just listen all over. And I always just loved. I would always listen to the bass line, and I would listen to the harmonies and stuff. And I noticed even at a young age the difference when I would hear a studio recording versus a live recording. The richness or the depth, there was a quality always to recorded versions of anything. It was always so identifiable versus when you heard them play live. Even if the artist played almost, like Rush style note for note, you can still hear, Anyway, long story short, what happened was it wasn't even so much that really turned me on to the drums, but I remember one time we went out on vacation one time, and we were in like a Wisconsin supper club. And we were in there, and there was this two-man band. It was his dad and his son. They both had like gold velour jackets on, and the dad was at a piano. And I think he had like bass pedals with the piano, and then his son played the drums, and they both sang. And I remember watching the drummer just play the drum. I must have been 4 or 5, and going up, and he let me stand behind the drums and look at them, and they were just beautiful. And I just, I'd ask for a drum set. My dad, he's like, "Sorry, son, we can't have that kind of noise in the house," And so what ended up happening was, I think when I got into 4th grade, I joined the band. In 4th grade, I think you were supposed to kind of join the band, like the school band. So I joined a snare drum, and I got myself a Ludwig Acrolite, which, this is 1976. So yeah, I think my Acrolite, now people are clamoring for these Acrolites. I had new from the factory Acrolite, which now, people, and I remember a couple people I was with, there were like 7 of us that played snare drum. And I remember at least 3 of them were gold badge. They were, and we know, so, but, in 1976, those were just 6, 7 years old. They were just like, and I remember lugging that UFO case, those big, heavy, I remember dragging that back and forth to school. When you're in 3rd grade, I mean, it weighed a billion pounds. It had the snare in it, but also those old heavy, old gauge, Ludwig stands, and God knows whatever the house was in it. But I did that just for a couple months, and I hated it. I hated standing at the drum set and trying to do rudiments and stuff. I just was like, F it, I'm just not going to do it. So what ended up happening is my friend Darren, whom I grew up with, we had a drum set that he played, but he also played guitar. So he's like, and I told him how much I love the drums. He's like, well, come on over to my house and you can play the drums and we'll form a band. So this would have been in 1982. I was going into 8th grade. Sure enough, what he did, we were huge Zeppelin fans at that time. I think what happened, I got into Zeppelin when my brother had Houses of the Holy on vinyl, Zeppelin 2 on vinyl, Zeppelin 3, I think, on vinyl, and The Song Remains the Same on vinyl. He's a few years old, several years older than I am. And I used to listen to those, but the thing that really kind of captured me and brought me into Zeppelin was the live rendition on the vinyl of No Quarter, which subsequently in the past 25 years, Jimmy Page has decided to absolutely butcher the arrangement to match the arrangement that they ended up using in the film, which has a couple awkward edits and also removes the coolest part of the solo. out of, you know, where they're just killing it, you know. And I remember I used to listen to that over and over again. And it's funny, my friend George, who has the PFOZ channel and the Bonhomology, he loved it too, you know. And anyway, so when I heard that, I really got back into Zepp, and I started listening to all the stuff, or I got into Zepp, I should say. And then my friend Darren, so he was such a Zeppelin fan that we had seen, I don't even think we'd seen the Song Remains the Same film yet, but we made a stage in his basement that was black that had like some glitter on it. He made himself like a dragon suit. His guitar was like a knockoff Black Beauty. And I played these drums that were like, I forgot what the manufacturer was. You know, they were like a Japanese import. I used to mount the 2 rack toms on a hi-hat stand. I didn't have a bass drum, so I would play the ride. I only had one cymbal. I played the ride with my left hand. On my right hand, I had a towel on the floor tom, and I go back and forth like this. So like boom, ba, boom, boom, ba, boom, boom, ba, that kind of thing. It was Red Sparkle. And we ended up, my friend Darren actually garbage picked. He found a Red Sparkle 22-inch bass drum in the garbage. That was actually, it was another Japanese stencil brand. Wow. Different one, though. It was like a Norma. And the other ones were like, I don't know, like Zesta or something. And then I had a bass drum, and I went out. My first bass drum pedal I bought was a Camco. When Camco, you know what I mean? It's probably that would have been 82 maybe. Camco probably went out of business, but this music store still had a couple old bought the pedal. Oh my God, it was just great, man. So that's how I started. And I should be a hell of a lot better than I am.
And was that your first drum set then?
Yeah, yes, and it was his kit, you know. So, but then eventually, what ended up happening was I wanted to I did get a drum set, and in those days, I wanted a Ludwig drum set, you know, because Bonham and Ringo had Ludwig drum sets, and so they had like an ad, I don't know what they call them there, but like an ad paper here to look for a used drum set, and I found and in those days. You know, in 1982, everybody and their brother was selling all their Rogers, Ludwig, and Slingerland Camco stuff because everybody wanted Pearl and Yamaha and Tama because that stuff was really coming up. So you'd see pages and pages in this catalog of people giving away these Slingerland, Ludwig, Rogers. I mean, I remember being like, Rogers, what the hell's Rogers? With Dynasonic, what the hell? You know, I remember seeing like matching Dynasonic, Red Onyx, and thinking like, what's this crap? You know what I mean? And anyway, so I found a drum set that was in my price range, and I went to it, and I was so excited to get it. There was a Ludwig drum head on the front of it, a Ludwig sticker. It said Ludwig, but the drum set was a Japanese import that somebody had stripped the finish off and painted black. It was a total hunk of shite, and I paid $350 for it in $1982.
Wow.
Which is like, I don't know, what is that today? $1,600 in today's money? I don't know. So I got totally shafted, but I played him for a few years, about 5 years. And then I, bought a Pearl export kit that was secondhand because and then I finally found myself a vintage Ludwig kit later that so I sort of stepped up into quality drums, in like the early 90s, you know what I mean? But that's how I got into drums, just playing right off. We started writing songs right off the bat.
Cool. And I'm guessing you've got quite a collection now.
Well, yeah, there's a fair amount of stuff, but it's not as much as over the years I used to collect quite a bit. And what I used to do is, it was a hobby really, because I had, back in the 90s, in the early 90s, what happened was I wanted to finally get myself a proper older Ludwig drum kit. And I found one in this same paper, 10 years later. And this, this old lady was selling her husband's drum set. It was a blue oyster pearl, oyster blue pearl, with a Superphonic and 602s, and she was selling it for $350, the exact same price that I totally got in the shaft 10 years before. But I realized it was, so I sent her $300 more. I remember her name was Josephine Alongi, and her husband was like Philip Alongi or something. He played in Chicago at a lot of the clubs and stuff. And that was a great kit. I had it for a while, but I ended up selling those drums there's a fella in the States named Blair Holben, who's sort of a drum broker guy. I sold them to him, and he sold them to Alan White of, not of Yes, the other, Oasis.
All right, I was gonna say Oasis. I wasn't sure if that's who you were meaning.
Yes. So Oasis has the 3-piece. I kept the snare and the other stuff.
Wow.
But yeah, but then I started buying and selling, drum kits. And in those days before the internet, it was harder to do. Somebody would describe a drum set to you that they'd say was a Ludwig and had all these great cymbals. And you drive 45 minutes to get there to find out it was a total hunk of shite, So that used to happen. But so I was kind of in the vintage game back in the late 90s. And I had a lot of stuff go through my hands. I found a lot of pretty good stuff. But, I just what started to happen in later years, I kind of got into modern. There came a time, you ever see the movie The Jerk with Steve Martin, where he's like, stop bringing me all this old wine. I want some new, fresh stuff, kind of like that, So I started getting my hands on some newer drums to check them out. I get odds and ends, deals on eBay. So now I sort of have a lot of odds and ends tom-toms here because I just bought them over the years just to see what the construction was like. And so I always wanted to know, at least as best I could, what I was talking about. If I was giving anybody advice, I didn't want to be talking out of my ass, or not consciously not to, But yeah, so I guess I started playing drums 38 years ago, if you can believe that.
Wow, nice.
God, what year were you born? I bet you were born. Don't tell me. I bet you were born in 1994.
Oh, I wish. 94? No, 10 years earlier than that.
Oh, dude, you're born. So all right, so that means you are what, 36?
35. Yeah, I will be 36. Yeah.
Oh, God. Okay, well, dude, you look good for your age, man.
Oh, thanks. There we go.
I'm 75. No, so but you
good for your age.
no, but that's that's the thing. So yeah, it's just that. So that's kind of my history with the drums.
Cool. And this seems like a relevant time to ask you a question from one of my students, Glenn, who's a big fan of yours.
Oh, terrific.
He has asked me to ask you because he knew about your equipment, buying and selling.
Oh my God.
So he has said, he has asked, what piece of drumming equipment do you most regret selling on?
Oh my God. There's a couple of them, I must say. I do regret selling. I got my hands on a Gretsch 1950s Gretsch 2213-16 that had a matching 6.5 by 14 snare in Peacock Sparkle, which is a rare. It's like champagne sparkle. It's like if you morph champagne sparkle with like a black galaxy. So it was champagne sparkle, but it had little green and red, like glitter in it here and there, like smaller pieces. You know what I mean? And I ended up actually selling those drums to a fella named Eddie Ho, who was a drummer, a famous drummer back in the day, who had disappeared. A lot of people had thought he died and stuff, and he was really falling on hard times. And I didn't realize it was him when I sold him to him, till I asked, there was a policeman that, oh, you sold him to Eddie? I'm like, yeah. He's like, do you know who that is? I'm like, yeah, he's Eddie. He's got a beard. No. He's like, his name's Eddie Ho, man. He used to play with the Mamas and the Papas and Donovan. And, he was a big deal, And, yeah, so Eddie Ho since passed away. But I sold that drum set. I wish I'd kept that. There was a couple things. There was a 2012-14 Sky Blue 1966 Ludwig kit that was like dead ass mint with its. I wish I'd kept that. But by and large though, really, I also sold. You know what? Really, here's the thing that chafes me. I'll tell you right now. You know what it is? I'll tell you, Tom. There's two things that I wish I hadn't sold. One time, I had a buddy collector of mine come up from Georgia. Jillionaire, loaded guy, made his money doing something, but would buy and sell drum sets for a hobby as a drummer. And we were in Guitar Center, the Guitar Centers they have. And we walk in, I'm like, all right, Bill is his name. I'm like, let's look around. I said, oh, and there on the floor they were selling a used Ludwig 6.5 by 14 Keystone badged 1965 6.5 by 14 Supraphonic. Now, to just be friendly with Bill, I figured he came all the way up from Georgia. I'm like, Bill, I picked it up, and he's like, oh man, that's a nice score. I said, Bill, I'll tell you what, you can buy it. So Bill probably paid $125 for it. He probably ended up selling even in those days for probably $400. Now, and then I had another one of those. I forget where I even got that. Oh, I got that other one from the middle school. It was another alloy 6.5 by 14. And I think I sold to my friend Lawrence at a great price. You know what I mean? Lawrence, another guy who's self-made, a jillionaire guy. So I'd say those two Superphonics probably. So the next time I see for a good deal a 6.5 by 14 Superphonic with a Keystone badge, I'm gonna slay everybody to get my hands on. Like mine. I would probably say. I would have to say. Oh, and there's another thing too. Here's another thing that I did not buy at the time because I didn't know what it was. In the mid '90s, I stumbled upon a 24-inch Paiste Giant Beat, an original Giant Beat. And the thing about the original Giant Beats is that ink came off real easy. They used like a white inking, not like a black. It was white and it came off super easy. It was a big 24, and in the embossed stamp that says Paiste, the Giant Beat was the only series where it didn't say in the embossed stamp what the line was. In those days, you'd see an embossed stamp in there. It would say 2002. It would say Formula 602. The Giant Beat just said Paiste made in Switzerland. That's it. The moon and rays, you know what I mean? And in God we trust or whatever it said. But I didn't, I tapped. I'm like, yeah, it sounds pretty good, but it's 24 inches. And that was it. I wish I'd realized that's what that was. That was like $50 at the time. But yeah, that's pretty much it. But I've had a lot of stuff go through my hands like that. Nothing really stands out, really, I would say, except for the Peacock Sparkle and those two 6.5 by 14 Superphonics.
Awesome.
Oh my God. So yeah, please tell Glenn, I appreciate him being a fan. And yes, I would say that's probably what it is. There's probably something I'm not thinking of now too that will occur to me in a little while, but
that's cool.
I don't know.
So the answer to this question may be an obvious one, but I'm going to ask you. So if you had to pick one, who's your all-time favorite drummer? But I do feel that this is a hard question because I couldn't answer it because, just because we may have an all-time favorite drummer now doesn't mean that he's always, or she has always been
right
our favorite. So, but yeah, if you had to pick one right now on this spot,
I would have to say, of course, Bonham. I would have to say probably Bonham. And then the two runners up would be Phil Collins and Stuart Copeland.
Cool.
I would say they'd be, so it's sort of the triangle: Bonham, Stuart Copeland, Phil Collins. I would have to say. And
the reason I kind of went a little bit further with that question is because we can't just have one favorite drummer, can we? Because we have
no, we can't.
So many influences to build on, especially as we grow as drummers, and as we get older. The people I listened to when I first started playing, I still love, but obviously I've got
right.
many more influences now than I have. So it's kind of a loaded question.
Yeah,
really.
right. I think part of the thing is sometimes with drummers is sometimes it's kind of when they play certain fills or do things, sometimes there's more mystery there for me in a certain way. You're not really sure how they played it or how they sticked it. Do you know what I mean? And like, again, there's not a lot of footage about him. There's footage of Copeland, doing what he did. And I'll tell you, the day I found out that Copeland used a delay, he used to do so much stuff. I'm like, God, how the hell is he doing all that? Yeah. He's like, a delay, click. And, but it's funny. I mean, there's different reasons. Like, sometimes it might be somebody's particular fills they do or a feel they have or there a certain musicality they have or a sound they got. But I really, but there's a lot of drummers over the years that I've really, there's so many drummers for different reasons. There's a lot of, like Buddy Rich is great. His technique was so marvelous. But I'm really not, then I'm not really so much a fan of his playing because unless it's like a certain big band stuff, which was, I guess, really his forte, but he always really kind of, to me, sounded like he was really sort of pushing everybody too hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was kind of a negative for me. As a drummer, I really got a kick out of was, and I saw footage of him probably for the first time in a VHS cassette in the late 80s. God, what was his name? But he was a black fella, and he almost had Buddy type technique, but he was so much more musical and a great feel. And he used to do the thing with the sticks where he'd he'd be playing and the sticks would be flying all over the place. Like it'd sit on his shoulder for a minute and it was just like it would come around the back. God, Sonny Payne.
Oh, okay. Yeah, right.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. And but today there's so many drummers, like anybody, you see a lot, like it started like in the 80s or into the 90s, a lot of speed metal drummers, sometimes you'd be like, they suck, but then you realize you'd watch them, especially live, and you'd be like, oh my God, the skill required to play that's unbelievable. And you really have respect. I mean, it's, especially when you see a metal drummer like that, and then they sit behind a drum kit and they play jazz or so. I mean, I don't have a very at all wide all my skill is playing like rock or blues. You know what I mean? I can't, my Latin, I can't do Latin. My jazz is all ding, 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 ding. You know what I mean? I just don't have a wide, array of, I'm pretty narrow in my tastes.
I think that's okay though, because we play what we love, don't we?
Oh yeah, right.
It's very good to be like, a drummer that can play all genres and all styles, but ultimately it always comes back to we play what we love.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. That is exactly true, Tom. Exactly.
And off camera earlier, we were talking a little bit about my main gig, which is Purple Zeppelin. So it's a tribute to Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin. And that's what's led me to talking to you, the Led Zeppelin. And we were talking earlier about learning songs and people not necessarily like listening to what's being played and just like assuming what's being played. And, a good example of that may be rock and roll. I mean, there's lots of good examples, but rock and roll, I've heard so many people playing that wrong. And can you just kind of talk to us about like how you learn that material? So like when you hear it and listening to the record and listening to what Bonham or whoever the drummer is, what they did and how they did it.
Well, the thing is, in the older days, what you really had to do with Bonham or anything else is the neat thing about vinyl, it being like truly analog in the sense that you could slow it down and you really could hear it. It's kind of neat now, like with YouTube now they have, it used to be that you could just do half speed or whatever, but now you can do like quarter speed and stuff. And it's always really good. Like it was neat to see like the Bonham stuff that came out of Earl's Court, that Zeppelin stuff, in 1975, because they videotaped that. That's not film. Like in a certain way, film is like digital in the sense that it's like samples, like click, click, click. I mean, it is. It's very digital in that sense. Whereas video isn't. You know what I mean? Video is really, not video. So there's some really good stuff when you slow down what Bonham or somebody's doing on video. You can see it a lot better because the shutter click sometimes you might miss one or two strokes on a fast double or something. But I guess what I would do is I would just really kind of memorize what it just sounded like to me. I do remember being totally wrong on Fool in the Rain. I remember I was trying to show somebody how I thought Fool in the Rain went. And there's this other drummer, really nice guy and a damn fine drummer. He lives around here. He was actually in a band called ... that actually was on one of the shows in America, like one of the national shows. But I remember his name was Stefan Conkey, God love him. Great drummer, nice guy. And he's like, no, man. He's like, and he couldn't really play it. But he's like, I'm convinced, because this was at the beginning of his drumming career. I'd probably been playing a couple of years more than he had, or a couple of months, I should say, just because I was 2 years older than him, maybe. But he's like, no, and he was playing it the right way. You know what I mean? I was like, no. And then finally I went home and I started asking around with him. I'm like, God, I think Stefan's absolutely correct. And so I learned that this was 35 years ago. But with rock and roll, I didn't really realize that Bonham was necessarily playing those notes with the left hand all the way through the song. I mean, you'd hear it, totally on, in the rest of the stuff. But probably until, people used to talk about, I don't know, I guess to skip back to the original question, I guess I just really relied on my ears. And that's actually the reason why I got into making the videos, because I would see, some name drummers, make videos and they'd be like, usually Fool in the Rain, ironically. And like, this is how he does it. But they were playing it wrong. They were playing it with way too many notes, playing it a lot more difficult than, in fact, Bonham actually played it technically. Although, you know, the way Bonham really plays Fool in the Rain, there's really a certain feel. Like I've never really heard anybody sit and play Fool in the Rain exactly like Bonham does.
Yeah.
You know, my shortcomings of it, you know, especially with my left hand sometimes, is the second ghost note that occurs right before the snare hit. You know, I muddy that up a lot. You know, my hi-hat's a little muddy. You know, but really, I would just say, just really by, you know, listening to it, I guess, I don't know, but that's kind of why I got into making the videos. But I will say this, in all fairness to the world and everybody, my, I don't know, second or third video I ever put up was me playing the crunge, and I was just playing. It wasn't necessarily a tutorial. I was just playing it, but I was playing it wrong. But I left the video up. You can still find it on there. You know what I mean? I'm just a skull. You know,
yeah.
But yeah, I just, you know, I guess just your ears, you really, you know, and I tell people, like, when they're drumming sometimes too, and I try to do it when I'm playing, you know, close your eyes when you're playing, because you really rely more on your ears and the feel of it than you do necessarily looking or being distracted. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I guess I just say, you know, and I did in the old days, I did try to slow records down. I would just kind of take my finger and sort of rub it on the edge of the record, be like, dun, dun, boom, boom, you know what I mean? But yeah, to answer your question after all that talking, I guess that's the answer.
Going back to what you said about Oasis earlier, so Alan's brother, Steve White, who played for Paul Weller and the Style Council and people like that, I interviewed him for one of these, and he said about putting pennies or, you know, coins on the record to weight it, to slow it down.
My God, that's a great idea. I think somebody had mentioned that before, but that's a great freaking idea.
There you go.
God almighty, there you go. Jumping Jiminy. Holy moly.
So, this is probably the most important question of this whole interview.
Uh-oh.
And I want a really good answer from you, Terry. So, drum roll, please. What's your favorite cookie?
Cookie?
Yeah.
Matt's chocolate chip cookies. Oh, they're the greatest. Followed closely by original spec Oreos that they changed starting 25. I'm going to see, now you asked the right question there, Tom. And then a close third are the old Maurice Linnell cookies they don't sell anymore.
Okay.
But, all right, so to get to Matt's chocolate chip cookies, which is an outfit in this neck of the woods, they're so delicious. They went through a rough period there for a while where I don't think they were sealing the packages quite as well, because you'd grab it off the shelf, and if you ever buy a package or anything, sometimes squeeze it a teeny bit, and if it goes, it means it's not sealed properly. But if it stays robust, you know it's good. And I actually I sent an email to the Mats people. I said, I got to tell you, you know, the past 40% of the bags I've been squeezing have been totally going out. And they're like, sorry, Mr. Keating, we'll look into that. I swear to God, I actually contact corporation stuff all the time. People are like, in fact, I had the idea for caffeine gum back in the 1990. I said, you know what you do? I said, you know, people, but not a lot of people necessarily like Mountain Dew, but they want all the caffeine. So I set up a meeting. I swear to God, at Wrigley, the capital of Wrigley gum, in Chicago on Michigan Avenue and the Chicago River. I sat down with 4 or 5 people, and I didn't want to tell them. I said, I have an idea. And they said, well, come on in. I sat down with these people, and they're like, all right, Mr. King, what's your idea? And I said, caffeine gum. And they all sort of looked at me, and they sort of looked at each other like, all right, well, thanks, Mr. Keating. Don't call us. We'll call you. And to this day, I don't know why it's still, I mean, I'm sure it's around in the past 20 years now. But yeah, so I'd say Match chocolate chip cookies. They're delicious.
And would you, because in the UK, we're quite fond of dipping our biscuits. I know you don't call it a biscuit, but, you know, but would you dip the cookie or the Oreo in milk or coffee or?
Yes. In fact, the Mats I don't, because they're such where they're sort of more clay-like, like sort of more soft and rubbery-ish, not rubbery, but sort of soft and malleable, ductile, where what I do is I just stick the whole cookie in my mouth typically, start to chew it a little, and I take a big sip of milk, so my mouth is just filled with the cookie and and milk mixture until it sort of gets into sort of a slurry, and then I swallow it. But with Oreos, yes. Now here's the thing. So you were born in 1984. Oreos and a lot of food companies, what started to happen was, and I'm dead serious here, when cigarette lawsuits started coming, people started suing cigarette companies and they started winning. Thank God. I mean, but food companies got really nervous. It was around that time that a lot of food companies realized that they might start being subject to lawsuits, and I'm sure some came along when they started using partially hydrogenated oils and stuff. Really, really, really bad for you. Much worse than regular fats. You know what I mean? So ironically, the substitutes that came up like in the 40s for like margarine stuff, these hydrogenated things were a hell of a lot worse for you. And you were in 1975, you were a lot better off eating regular butter than you were eating parquet margarine. Yeah, that's the thing, Anyway, so Oreo took it to heart. Oreo stopped using partially hydrogenated. What they did was they came out with the low-fat version of Oreos. So for a while, you'd have the regular Oreos and these. And then relative at that time, the low-fat ones tasted like shite, but the other ones were good. But then what they did was they made the low-fat the regular, and then they reduced the fat you know what I mean? So they were able to sort of table it down to finally where they just got rid of the partially hydrogenated fat. So Oreos don't really, in 1995, you could take an Oreo and set it on a piece of paper or a napkin, and it would leave a grease stain. You know how sometimes you set something greasy on paper, it gets sort of translucent? That's not the case. So when you used to take an original Oreo and dip it in milk, you had about 2 seconds before you had to take that baby out before it would break off and go to the bottom. Nowadays with Oreos, for the past 20 years, you can take one, dip it in milk, and hold it there for like 16 hours. It comes right out, and I'm sorry. I know you got more than you bargained for, Tom. I'm a rat.
No, it's great. This is what it's all about.
I should send you some mats. I'll send you some Matt's freaking biscuits. I'll put some Matt's, they better be, I don't want, I'll have to get the freshest container possible. I'll throw a Bonzoleum t-shirt and a coffee mug, and I'll send it off to you.
Hey.
You know what I mean?
Awesome. So my last serious question is, if you could give just one bit of advice to up and coming drummers, so people that are just starting out and they want to make a career of it, or get into a band, or try and just take their drumming more seriously, what would that one bit of advice be?
Keep doing it. And that both in the broad picture and the micro picture, and I know, and I've said this before, and I know sometimes it sounds, funny, but I do think oftentimes a lot of people that are attracted to drumming often have some attention deficit issues. When they sit and they might practice a paradiddle for a week, maybe like, I can't get it. I'll never be able to get, the key really is with drumming, or indeed it's a key to life in general, but with drumming is on the operational tactical level, sitting behind the drums, just keep doing it. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. If you're out there looking for other musicians to play with, just keep doing it. Keep doing it. They like that saying, that it's darkest before the dawn, so I would say, keep doing it, relax and keep doing it. That's always what I say. Just keep doing it.
Good stuff. Good advice.
TM. I trademarked that last year. I'm just joking. But yeah. So really keep doing it. You know what I mean? And that's even with me. Like I'm hoping one of these days, they're talking about now with people who have tremors that you might be able to go in and they do surgery. It's like they give you a slight little lobotomy. I'm dead serious. They take a little globule of your brain. And suddenly my hand's like, so because I tried beta blockers and it really didn't work. And but yeah, that's my next step. So I will get I'm dead serious. I know they're talking about it, but it's very frustrating now for me because when I do rudiments and stuff, the tremor really, but I keep doing it. I still practice, my rudiment. I love the 5-stroke roll, 7-stroke roll, paradiddle diddle, I buzz, doubles, singles. I still do it because I'm just hoping one, and I'll get better. It keeps me on, but it's still, there's sort of a threshold that I sort of get and I stumble at, but I just keep doing it.
Well,
you know what I mean?
And that's it. What you're saying there is the thing that I say the most in a working week when I'm teaching. Keep going, do it again, repeat it.
Yeah.
People, I think, often just play something a few times and they're like, oh, I can't do it. And it's like, well, do you think I could do it when I first tried? Do you think Bonham just sat down and played those, like those, you know? No.
Right.
It's practice. It's about keep going.
Well, also, too, is sometimes you have the things, too, where you might say to somebody, well, this is a paradiddle. And you're like, da, 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 da. And then they sit down after a minute or two. Then they go, ba, 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 ba. I can do it. Why should I know how to do it? This is what it's like. Yeah, but now you have to learn how to totally like tattoo that onto your, you know, prefrontal cortex and get the ball rolling and be able to do it just so naturally. You know what I mean? Like I tell the younger kids, which now is probably already archaic, but when I'd say to the kids, I'd say, well, you know, when you first get a video game, I'd say, you know, but let's say everyone has an Xbox or whatever the hell everybody used to play, and your buddy gets a game before you do, and for a week or two, they're like, come on over, Johnny, come to my house and play Winds of War or whatever the hell it is. You go over there and your friend kicks the shit out of you for a week and a half because he's been playing it for a month and you don't know how. But sure enough, after a week or two or three, you get better at it again. You get good at it, and you kick. You know, that's how it works with everything. You have to just remember to just keep doing it. You know what I mean? Really, that's really the key.
I use that video game analogy all the time. Like,
do you really?
Yeah,
cool.
You have to learn the controls. Like, you don't just pick up the game and go, yeah, I'm a pro at this. You have to learn what you're doing and the combinations, you know, of button presses. And it's the same with drums. And I had a student. I hope he doesn't watch this. I had a student a few years ago whose mum said, so let's just call him Little Johnny. They're all called Little Johnny. Little Johnny's gonna stop having lessons now, and this was the thing. I'll wait till you finish drinking your water, because otherwise you might spit it everywhere. So little Johnny's gonna stop having lessons with you now because he knows everything. And I was just like, okay.
You must be joking. She said that to you?
She said that, and I said, okay, well, I don't know everything, and I've been playing for like 20 years. So good on little Johnny. Good luck to him. He knows everything. Right.
Wow. Little Johnny, who was the captain of the, you know, the Oakland Athletics back in no, but I mean, it's, yeah, you get that. You know, it's kind of like sometimes when wow. Anyway, hopefully little Johnny comes back. Hopefully little Johnny will see the error of his ways and return to you as the guru of drumming. You know what I mean?
No, little Johnny plays guitar now. It doesn't matter anymore.
Little Johnny's moved on. No, but you know that does happen though. You know, you get that. But again, you know, you never really stop learning, and whether it's drums or anything. You know, there's a lot of things. You know,
learning about saturated fats and stuff right here.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. But look, you can look that. I'm telling you, man. If I go back, I think Oreo should reissue the original formula. Just put a warning on it. Warning: this has, you know, partially hydrogenated fat. So you might, you know, if you eat 2 bags of these for the next 8 years, you might have a myocardial infarction. But I'd pay $20 a bag for the original recipe. Oh, I'm telling you, oh my God, they were delectable. An original Oreo was delectable. Now they taste like the knockoff Oreos did back then. They taste like Hydra. They do.
A good chance to actually say this then. So an interview a way back that I did, one of these interviews was with the legend that is Steve Ferroni.
My God, great musician, great drummer.
An absolute legend. But we got on to talking about chocolate and biscuits, and he's originally from Brighton in England, and he lives in LA, and I can't remember what his exact words, but it was basically something along the lines of chocolate in America is shit. Like he was saying, like is it Hershey's or whatever?
Hershey's.
Like the way it tastes, they put stuff in it or something to make it taste like that.
Do you know what it is? Do you know what their secret
is? What is it?
It's sour milk.
Oh, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Sour, and you can taste it. Once you really think sour milk and eat some of it, you're like, but you know what it is? But people are just so used to it from the time they're little. I do love Hershey's chocolate, but I also love Cadbury. And I love I got to tell you, I'm a chocolate guy. Okay. In fact, do they have over in England, there are what are these cookies, biscuits? It's like a white biscuit cookie that has a layer of chocolate on it. They got to be British.
White one.
Hey, I'm gonna look it up. Can I look it up while we talk?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So yes. Oh my God, they're scrumdiddly. Oh my God, my wife would kill me. She turned me on to them, and they just changed the box. They have dark chocolate ones and they have regular chocolate ones. They're made by a company called Lu, which I think is a British company, isn't it?
I've not heard of them. No.
Oh shite. Okay, well I made that up. All right. You know what they are?
Yeah.
They are petite écolier. So they're obviously French, I guess.
French. All right.
Petite. Hang on a second. I'm going to show you. Where the hell is my phone? I'm going to take a photograph of this box, and I want you to know if you can find these. They got to be. Oh man, hang on a second here. Come on now. My phone is disagreeing with me because it's a hunk of shite. You see, I have an iPhone 1 from 1950. All right, so let's see here. Here, I'm going to show you the picture of this. This had better work.
At least an iPhone 1 is worth a lot of money, and you haven't sold it yet.
Can you see that?
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, I have had those before. Yeah.
Oh my God, they're good.
We have a similar. Oh, it's French.
What?
Choco Lebanese or something it's called.
Yeah.
Something like that.
I can't find you. What the hell happened to you? Oh, there you are.
Hey.
I lost it. It's like shite. But yeah, no, but you're right. I mean, Steve Ferrone. Oh my God, that guy. Man, that guy's groove. I remember when he hooked up with Tom Petty. Remember Tom Petty brought him in after Stan Lynch was out. You know, I saw them play at the United Center. I saw Steve back there. Steve was always was he a Pearl guy always?
I think so, but he's been Gretsch for a while now.
Has he? Yeah, the Ludwig guys got to get their claws in there.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, listen, man, I got to tell you, this is terrific. I really, Tom, you're a great guy, man. You're a hell of a drummer too. You know, you keep doing what you're doing over there, man. You've built a nice operation there, man. You're helping people, you're teaching, and that's terrific.
Thanks. Well, and same to you with your videos. You know, your videos have helped me to learn the show.
You know, I got to tell you, it's funny. I being like Bonzoleum, we were in Bahamas. My wife and my daughter and I went to the Bahamas, and we were on vacation. We were staying at this hotel, and we were eating breakfast, and I was like wolfing down on my food, and my wife kind of leans over. She's like, Terry, there's a fella at the table right behind you who keeps going like this. You keep seeing this. You know what I mean? So he comes over, and he's from England. And my accent's going to be horrible. He's like, hello, are you Mr. Bonzoleum? I was like, and I'm thinking to myself, he's going to pull out a stiletto and be like, you're playing the crunch wrong. But he recognized me in Bahamas. And he's asking me all these questions. And, all these people are looking, like, who is this freaking, like, they think I'm some kind, but it's nice. People sometimes are like, oh, it's the Bonzoleum guy. But it doesn't happen. It's happened a couple times in my life. But anyway, yeah, but so I appreciate, seriously, you're doing great there, man. Look at that. You got your headquarters. Maybe sometimes you'll start a drum line or some sort of product you could make too.
Yeah, I mean, you can buy a DrumWise t-shirt.
T-shirt. Absolutely, man.
You know what? When we first logged on, I was thinking, how have you got hold of a DrumWise t-shirt?
Yeah, isn't that funny? I was looking at that. I was kind of like, just tell everybody it is one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This is the DrumWise 1.0.
Yeah,
sure. That's the 2.0. No, but yeah, man.
Don't sell it. It'll be worth loads in 20 years.
Loads of cash.
Terry, thank you.
It's like
100.
We're clapping.
So, Terry, thank you so much for spending your time with us here at DrumWise today. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure talking to you too. Absolutely. Anytime.